Okay, cool. And everyone can still see my screen, correct? So we're designing this grocery store schema. And again, the biggest thing is, um, as to your point earlier, Clarice, once you're out on a team and then you need to produce like maybe stories or design documents that the rest of the team is going to use, that's one thing, but I make like working design documents that like no one but me sees all the time for tons of stuff. um and 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 so really these are to hopefully to help all of you manage your work, because as you're discovering, even like tasks that seem like a relatively small task for a software engineer are really like a project, and what we're really doing here is project management in a lot of ways, for ourselves. And that's pretty normal with software engineering. Um, and again, I think the critical pieces are sort of getting a sense of the big picture and writing out some stories and using whatever sort of diagramming tool you want. And, here we were given these entities, but you all could have come up with these yourselves, right? This is, I think, not, I think it can feel scary because to a degree, there's no wrong answer, but this is not the hard part. And also, as you'll discover, like there's so many common things across domains. Like you've got users have user profiles. Whenever someone's buying anything, there's almost always a products table. Um, Anything involving like posts and comments is going to have a pretty similar design as well. So there's a lot of patterns that you start seeing. And then once I have sort of an outline of the big picture, um, this took me a long time to get comfortable with, but I really do better. I try to break my work up into stages and start with like the simplest possible stuff. Um, so to just kind of continue rolling with our design here, we've got products. The product has a name, a price, a store ID. Store, is really just a placeholder to connect everything else to. Um, and again, this is where, like, if I was making an entity relationship diagram, these would all be relationships. And we're getting there because now we've got customer products. A customer can buy product from the store. Customer can buy a lot of products. And this is the key bit right here. This is a many, and really to actually drive this point home, a product can be bought by multiple customers. And this is where I really wanted to go away from the word item to product, because I'm not talking about one specific gallon of milk. I'm talking about the product, gallons of in milk that's for sale, right? And I know that that can be confusing, especially because we did look at inventory with some of the other assignments. And for me, at least, that's where I find taking the time to like rename things and think through stuff, whether it's by writing stuff down or drawing diagrams and using one of these design tools. Again, the spreadsheet is your friend. Honestly, I think maybe Google Sheets might be the best design tool of all. um, Helps me a lot because now I'm seeing, hey, this is a many to many relationship. I'm reminded, all right, this is right, not a specific gallon of milk, but a category of things that someone can buy at the store. So the many to many relationship is the one that's a little special and where we normally need a join table. because I can't bundle it all up into one row. And that's what an order. So this is where we'll kind of see what has to happen, because I do kind of like the idea of maybe we keep an order table, um, that tracks, like, when you go to the grocery store and you buy 20 things, you get one receipt. Um, but for now, I think what I'm going to do is, if I think about the naming here, I might look at what names they used, or what names Chad put down here. Customer order. Yeah, because if we, normally you name a join table something like customers or customer product of the two things. But that's a little weird, and I think not very intuitive about what that table represents. So I think I am going to go with I think I'm going to go with customer purchase. And really, the name is up to you here. You know what I mean? There's orders, there's customer orders, there's sales. Um, Especially because, this is not teamwork. Choose the names that make the most sense to you. But this is where we're going to capture a product ID and a customer ID. I don't know if I need to connect this directly to the store or not. There's a case to be made for it. At the same time, I'm feeling lazy, and both the customer and product are connected to the store, and this is connected to both of those. So I'm not going to worry about it. So the key thing to remember here is for customer purchase, and we're going to have, um, product ID, customer ID. And I apologize. Is my internet connection okay, folks? Okay, cool. And the ID of the thing itself, it's going to look like this. Right? Each product that a customer buys gets its own row. And I'm already thinking, this is where words get a bit tricky. And this is where real world examples help. Several of you, I think Kate did this. I know a couple other folks did as well, for 32 flavors. I might want to do this. I'm not going to worry about this right now. If I was doing an assessment or a problem assignment, if it like if there was a need to do this to accomplish the task or one step of the task where I was specifically instructed to, I would. If it was open-ended, I would make a note of this to myself and then hold off and wait till I got everything else done. And that's what I'm going to do now. And this is useful too, because the more complex your stuff gets, the more things you can build and do, and the more you want to do. And sometimes it's actually a good idea to just like make a note and come back to it later. So I've got this customer purchase table, and we're going to connect this to our product ID, and we're going to connect our customer ID to our customer. Now, a customer can have many purchases. Each purchase only belongs to one specific customer. I do wish this was on the other side of yeah, no, it doesn't want to do that. Let's see if I can delete this. There we go. So one customer has many purchases. Each purchase can only belong to one customer. And I need to give this relationship a cardinality as well. Each purchase is for a specific product, right? But a product can be purchased multiple times. And, you know, for the diagram's purpose, it's kind of cares about where you start out, in which direction the one-to-many points. For our purpose, it's more just having it clear in our head which direction the relationship points in. So now I've got a really great schema here that's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of things I haven't done, especially if I look back to the original problem statement. There are no discounts. There is no customer profile. You know, it might be a little bit of a pain to find all the purchases that a customer made. Maybe I even want to add a date here, but if I create that like sort of sale table to sort of capture, you know, that information of, you know, when you buy a whole, you know, a single sale, then, and I'm already confusing myself with the word sale for when I buy stuff or when something goes on sale. So I think maybe I'm going to just refer to discounts and sale. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and update my little story over here so I don't confuse myself again. So there's definitely more to be done, but these are the most important pieces that everything else builds on. And this is probably 50% of the work right here, if not a bit more. And that's why I think it's really useful. Do some big picture design. Like, it's sort of like the saying, like, think global, act local. Like, I kind of like to design out the big picture and have a very rough sketch that goes like several steps ahead or like of the whole plan, because sometimes you need to do that big picture design to identify some gotchas or problems. But then when I get to the building work, I like to break it up into stages. And because again, if I do this, I avoid bugs, I make less bugs. So, you know, I know that we can export from draw SQL, but I really don't want to do that. So, you know, this is my design doc and it's a little messy, and that's okay because it's just for me. So I'm going to go ahead and actually what I'll just do is let's create a file. Let's call it init.sql. And here I'm just going to do, I'm going to put some pseudocode in here. And can everyone read my VS Code? Okay. Awesome. And I'm doing this, I specifically want my diagram here as a reference. And that's kind of what I was trying to get set up. As you all can tell, I'm pretty visual, and I'm really big on, like, I make tons of typos and I forget stuff easily. So again, I want the computer to do the work. I want to be a little lazy. So let's go ahead. And I mean, if I really wanted to, I could do a split here and have this file here as a reference. And I'll do stuff like that all the time. And I don't think I'll need it, but I'll leave it there just because I was talking about it. So create table stores, create table customers, create table products, create table customer purchase. And I think I'll name this to customer purchases just to be consistent with my table namings. So the next question is, what order do I want to implement in? Do I want to create all my tables? I also want to create some dummy data. And I think what I want to do is create some dummy data and then like for one table at a time and then build them out. So that's it, right, for my stores. I don't think I'm actually going to create the CSV file. I'll probably just do insert statements. But this is really easy for me to read and see and visualize. And our customer probably does need a little more information at this point for this to be interesting and useful. So I'm going to add an email. And the reason I like email over name is that email has to be unique. Like the user account almost always has an email. And also, I don't have to think about first name or last name or anything like that. And of course, we're going to use Alice and Bob. And then for products, and I do think there's something to be said for creating all my fake data first before actually creating like an actual table schema. Because that way I'll catch if I've missed something. And it forces me to think about primary and foreign keys. So our product has an ID, a name, price. I'm going to put the store ID here just so those things are sort of, it's for me that organizes it a bit better. I have no idea. That feels like quite expensive milk. I just want some numbers I can differentiate. I think that's all I need for my products table to get this minimum viable prototype off the ground. And I'm going to do this for customer purchase as well, even though, this is a join table, so it's a little different, but ID, product ID, customer ID. And actually, there's something I forgot here that I think is pretty important to this table. It's not critical, but there is one thing. Anyone have any thoughts? And it was a little bit of a leading question on my part because this is so open-ended. But what I realize I don't have here is quantity. And I do want to add that now because I think that one's pretty useful. I don't even have to add that quantity now if I don't want to. In some ways, I've just expanded scope on my minimum viable product, but that's okay. And the reason I do kind of want to add this is because I think it makes this a little more interesting. So we're going to do ID, customer ID, product ID, quantity. And here, because this is a many-to-many table, I do want to get multiple customers purchasing things and purchasing multiple things. So both Alice and Bob will be buying multiple products. And also giving, I deliberately use 3 and 5 here because Alice and Bob have different quantities and 3 and 5 are not IDs of anything right now. So for me, this helps me just see, especially when we just have a whole bunch of numbers, just visually identify what's going on a bit more. So at this point, I'm feeling like I'm in a good place to start turning some of this into SQL, because I've gone ahead and I've actually created some fake data. I have a pretty high degree of confidence that I can implement all of this stuff without issue. What's also nice is I can just create some data as I go, because say for this customer purchases table, it is going to depend if I want to like test that my schema is correct. I do have to insert some data, but in order to insert data here, I need data everywhere else. So in terms of what order to implement, and as our projects get bigger, like the order that we do stuff starts to have more impact on how productive we can be and avoiding bugs. This is clearly the last thing we want to implement for this stage. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen. I'm going to go ahead and take my own advice. That's not what I wanted. I'm going to do a split. And I'm going to start building this thing. I'm not going to worry too much about all the like drop table if exists stuff. I'll add that stuff in later. I just want to get stuff written. And I'm not going to worry about capitalizing things because I think we're all more used to seeing SQL now. And frankly, all that capitalization starts to take longer to type and hurt my fingers. And I want this, I do have strong feelings about table names being plural. And I'm not sure if you all saw this, but when we have, I think I have this correct. When we have something auto-generated, and it's the only thing, we can actually pass this special keyword default into this insert statement, and I think that will work. And let's find out, because I do want to start running stuff. I also do want to move my terminal back if I can. If I can't figure this out in a couple seconds, I'm just going to give up, but it is driving me a little nuts. So I just did this. There we go.
You go into view appearance,
Oh, it's
position.
there as well. Okay. Okay, that is good to know for the future. Perfect. All right, and now I'm happy. So now I have this. And I actually, I lied. I do want to do drop database if exists grocery store, because I am going to start doing a whole lot of, um, and actually I don't need to drop tables if I drop the whole database. So I am going to be running this init SQL file a whole bunch. So I think I will start getting myself ready to do that, because now I have everything set up really nicely. I probably need to do a bit more because I need to deal with the connections, but that's okay. We can do that later. Um, let's see here. Syntax error at or near. So this is an interesting error because it
I
says,
think it's your comma on
yeah,
line 35.
yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't point to the comma, but that's actually where the problem is. Um, and so if I was to do a little like mini retro on myself, I would say actually the thing to do is Adam, I should have ran the create table statement just by itself and then added the insert, which just goes to show like the less code, like running my code all the time, but doing less of it each time, like just doing it in smaller chunks really is the way to go here. Not sure why. I would have thought if I dropped the whole database. Oh, there's probably a couple things here that need to happen. So this is what I like to do at the beginning of this script. Like I'll always connect to some other database because I'm not sure that Postgres lets you drop a database when you're connected to it. I'm going to create it, and now I'm going to connect to it. And now I can create my tables on it. Lord knows what database. I probably just created, yeah, on my Atom C database, I just created a stores table, which is not what I wanted. There we go. And just to test, I can run this all the live long day and it works fine. And we've got a store, right? Which is not a lot of work, but if you look at all the scaffolding and setup that I've done, I have my workflow file ready to go. I have all the work I want to do mapped out. Now, all of a sudden, this implementation of writing the code is a whole lot easier. And I can focus more on writing code and avoiding syntax errors and remembering things that I need to work on. And I'm not trying to design and keep the design in my head at the same time as I'm actually implementing and writing code. And in theory, that's kind of what pair programming does as well. I know like when everyone's learning, that's not always sort of the flow of pair programming, but when you have two people who both know the domain and the task and have sort of experience with what they're doing, having that other person be the navigator is kind of awesome, because as the driver you can just focus on code and vice versa. So this is great, right? Because now I can start to get into a zone and be productive. And like the metaphor I always use is like you build a pyramid and building the base takes the most time because it's the widest part and you have to lay the most bricks. But if you do that, then each one gets quicker and quicker. Or you can use the snowball metaphor, whichever you prefer. I just want to see, do folks have any questions, whether it's about the SQL that I've written or the schema design or this init SQL script or anything else?
Yeah.
Yes,
So now you're operating under the presumption that you have one store. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay, so if you had multiple stores, how would that look differently?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think this is probably the most useful thing to look at. So there's two parts to that question. The first part is, would anything break with multiple stores? The second part is, even if nothing breaks, would we want to change our design because, like the domain has changed, right? Or there's just a new problem or features to be added. So will anything break? I don't think so. Right? A customer belongs to a store, products belong to a store, customer purchases belong to these other things. If I look at this, if I have multiple stores, while it won't break, if I don't assign any products to a store, that's a problem. And so if I have 3 stores, I now need to have us give milk to all 3 of those stores as a product. So in my products table, I need milk 3 times for each store. And that's totally fine. But in terms of design decisions, at that point, we might want to say, do I really want to have to do that all the time for products for every store? Or maybe products should not connect to stores at all. And I just decide that all stores have the same products. But the truth is that's going to be a design decision, which depends really on, the problem scope and what you're tasked to do and your own choices. Because there's both of those are valid approaches. And same thing with
When
custom.
you talk,
Oh, I just want to mention briefly, if we have multiple stores, we have to decide, can customers belong to multiple stores? Should customers belong to a store at all? But again, that is a design decision. This does not actually break our schema. Yes, what's up?
when you talk about the products not having a store ID, I guess is that because you're thinking of like a distribution of like everything comes off the same truck and goes to all the different stores, or is there some other reason for that?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Even simpler. I wasn't even thinking like that fancy. I was literally thinking about this. Right, we have ID, store ID, name. Remember, this is not inventory. This is not about how many like 6 packs of beer or 6 packs of Coke is in each actual store location. It's about the things that the store offers to sell. And if the store has any 6 packs of soda or beer left is outside the scope of what we're worrying about and modeling right now. All I was thinking about is it like, and actually this is interesting because actually this product ID is no longer a primary key if we want to have product IDs exist. This is what I was thinking about. The way that my schema is currently designed, if I have multiple stores, I'll have to just create 3 rows here if I want all the stores to offer milk. And that might make perfect sense. And maybe we do want to do that. Like if I open up a grocery store in Utah, maybe I don't want to sell beer at all because, beer you can sell, liquor, I think like most stores cannot sell in the state of Utah, right? So we may not want to have all stores have this offer the same products. On the other hand, this is extra work. This does kind of introduce like really what we would want if we go down this road is we now need a product ID because I still like having things have primary keys. Or we can use this as a composite primary key, but that's a more complex thing that we haven't seen, and you don't always want to do that. So this is really just the design decision. Does that make sense? because the question you asked about like inventory and thinking about that stuff is good, but we're not actually worrying about that right now.
Okay, yeah, I think I got it. You were talking more in terms of just how the rows appear when someone's navigating the database.
Um, Not even navigating, just how do we want to store our information about our stuff? Once I have 3 stores, do I want to have it so that I have to specify for each store what the products are? Or do I want to just have like a common list of products that all my stores offer? You know what I mean? Because if every store is going to have the same stuff, then we don't need this at all, right? And and this is the difference between, you know, the real world implications of that are kind of out of the scope of figuring this out because there's just so many details that we don't have. So this is really a question of I could do this and this will work great if I just know that all my stores are always going to sell the same stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. And to be honest, this is way
Yeah,
simpler.
I think so.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. What were you saying, Brian?
Just affirmative. I was just answering affirmative.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. I think the trick with this stuff and with design is really the most important decisions are, and this saying is true of so many things. The most important choices are what we don't do, and the most important choices are what we don't care about. I don't care about inventory, and there's a whole host of real world concerns I very much am not caring about. And that's actually the way to go, because once we get this, we can, like, if we want, we can bring those in. But if there's way too much stuff to try and care about everything. And Andrew, does this kind of like help with your question as well of like what changes if we have multiple stores?
Yep. I think you cleared it up pretty well. I guess the only other thing, as far as I understand it, that you would be changing is the relationships between the stores and the products and the customers. You'd have a many to many relationship as opposed to a one to many.
Uh,
Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And really, it would be up to us because there's not a wrong way to do it. You know, like if I have multiple customers, because again, this is not the real world. If I want to decide that each customer only belongs to one store, I can do that. And then this can stay exactly the same, right? We can have right? I can do stores, customers. I should have just done name and said, because it is actually is easier. I can have 2 stores. And I can have Alice belong to store number 1. And I can have Bob belong to store number 3. And that works totally fine. And again, is this right or wrong? It depends on our choice. Do we want a customer to be able to belong to multiple stores or not? And since this is simpler, if you're not sure, I always vote for go with the simpler thing until you have a good reason not to, or you've gotten the simpler thing done, and then you have time to do the more complicated thing. Okay. I want to circle back to implementation. And again, the most important thing here is deciding what we don't care about. Like it can make perfect sense to say, I don't care right now about a customer being able to belong to multiple stores. And that's where like all this writing and stuff that I did is really helpful. Like whether it's with the assessment or an assignment or a technical interview, when you kind of get the problem or the domain or the task, figuring out its scope, what I'm going to care about, and more importantly, what I'm not going to care about is actually the most important thing, because that's what lets us get rid of complexity and unknowns. And then we can always bring that stuff in later. All right, let's make some customers though. So we've got our customers. I've got my list of, and the nice thing about this is I can be reminded of my columns and their values. Our customer needs an ID. They are going to belong to a store for now. Do they need to belong to a store? Maybe, maybe not, but I've already made the design decision, and it's not going to hurt. And now the customer is going to have an email, which is going to be a varchar. And here, just for fun, though we don't really need it for a minimum viable prototype, I will throw in a not null unique constraint, because we would never want a customer to not have an email, and we would not want two customers with the same. Oh, we could have two customers with the same email. It would depend. Really, we probably wouldn't if this is a customer account, and like if they order groceries online and we have to send them billing information, you usually want email to be unique for users. So now I've got my customers, and let's insert some stuff into there. And I know I'm gonna want multiple customers later on for these purchases. So well, let me make sure this one works, and then I'll add another customer. And I think I am going to start doing what I did the other day of writing little queries, so that every time I run my script, I don't have to like run a select statement. Oh, that's the wrong one. And interesting. So I've got a bunch of errors here. With P-SQL, you usually want to start at the first error message at the top, because all these others cascade from it. And once I fix this, the others might go away. Init SQL, line 48. Syntax error at or near references, store ID references stores ID. I see the problem here. Can anyone spot what I did wrong here?
No variable type, need an integer.
Exactly. And that's a really easy mistake to make. I just made it. I need a column type. And, I'm doing stuff lowercase, but if you all find that keeping the stuff uppercase helps you see more clearly, then actually I would say it's worth it in terms of time, because if typing stuff out uppercase saves me from a bug, like I could easily spend like 20 minutes trying to figure out what I did there and then finally figuring it out, then, if you find that the uppercase helps you not do that, then it is totally worth it. So I do have another bug here. And that would be because I just made the same mistake twice in a row. Which again goes to show, like, I think like kind of productivity is not about not making mistakes. Like, we're human, we're not meant to be machines. It's about like using tools and workflows to make it really easy to make little mistakes and then find them. So now I have an invalid input syntax here. And that is, I see exactly what's going on here. What did I do wrong here, folks?
You didn't specify the things next to customers. It has to say like store ID and email.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't think of the word for it.
Yeah, the column names that we want to insert the values into. You actually can do it this way. If I do it like this, I believe I then have to have it be in order. And so this default stands in for this ID. I'm not 100% if this works, but let's see. Yeah, so that does work. I would recommend not doing it that way. And we very specifically kind of would show it this way, because you can do this consistently. I think there's a lot to be said for consistency. And I'm going to go ahead and create Bob as well. And it might be time for a break. So we could break now, or I could keep rolling because we're almost done here. I think we just need products and customer purchases. And then we could break. What would people like to do?
Keep rolling.
All right, let's do it. I'll get through products and customer purchases, and then I'll break. And do folks have any questions about anything? Cool. So just to reiterate, I think the big things are pay attention and be real deliberate and choose the stuff you're not going to care about for right now. And that makes life a whole lot easier. And in a lot of ways, I think the best way to solve a problem is to decide, I'm not going to care about it now. And is there a smaller bit that I will care about? And then the other piece here is, again, like this pseudo coding and this upfront work I do, like the writing of the code is actually like kind of the least valuable and important part of being a software engineer. But especially since this is also like, if I do all this stuff, I avoid bugs before I make them, is the way I think about it. So I think it's really useful, whatever your process is, to start figuring out a process that helps you do that and be productive. So we've got customers, and now we want products up here, right? So let's add our products table. And products are going to have an ID. And again, I know I repeat this over and over and over, but really try to just like run your code after every single line. Like if I really wanted to, with this script, the way I have it set up, I could run it every time I add a new column to my products table. And in fact, I would encourage that if you find it useful. Because, and actually, as to the error that I just made a little while ago, if I actually practice what I preach, lo and behold, I catch this right away. I've only written one line, so I know exactly where the problem is. So it just becomes easier and easier to debug. And in fact, I'll go ahead and do that this way with what I was just saying. And it looks like I have a syntax error at or near values, actually, which I missed. Oh, I see what's going on here. Can anyone tell me what mistake I made here in this insert statement?
A repetition of values.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a really easy one to make as well. And to be honest, if you find it easier to just never do insert statements where you insert multiple things in one go, and you just want a whole bunch of insert statements that look like this, I'm all for that. And there's a lot to be said for that. Because again, I think simplicity and consistency is how we avoid programmer error, which is really what kind of the bane of our existence is. Awesome. So now I've got a name. And now, do we need anything else for our products table? We need a price. And I'll just make this the numeric field, which is like a floating point field. Excuse me. And now let's make some products. So by the way, you all saw me use that default before when we created the store. We don't need to do that here because we're naming the columns. But Postgres will see like, hey, this is a primary key column. I need it, and it basically kind of it inserts that by default. So we've got the
I've
story.
had problems.
Yes.
Oh, I've had issues where when I was trying to insert new data, it did not like picking up at the next ID. Does default prevent that?
I would have to see the specific code. I think that just sounds like a question around like the syntax of whatever specific insert statement you were doing. If you want to, just Slack it to me and I can take a look.
Okay.
Things like that, because it's so easy to make typos. Like I make them all the time, as you see, or there's like a missed assumption somewhere. Usually stuff like that, I find like there's not a general answer. It's like you just got to look at the specific thing I was trying to do and fix that. But let's insert into products. We got our store ID, and we're going to buy milk, and it's going to cost 5, and our cereal is going to cost 3. And again, because I've done all this pseudocoding, I can just follow my script, which is awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and, select everything from products and run this, and let's see. And this is just typo. And I have another typo here. Can anyone see what mistake I made here?
No comma, 2 values.
Exactly. Which again, I think goes to show if I didn't try to get fancy with the multiple values insert, I've made a typo twice now doing that. And if I just did it like this, I wouldn't have made those errors at all. So a lot of the times it really can make sense to, there's this saying like worse is better. Like, because it's, when you're programming for several hours, it's just so easy to make an error, a typo, that there's really a lot of value again to simplicity and consistency. And what's my syntax error now at or near values? I did the exact same thing, right? And a lot of that is because I'm just so used to like visually seeing stuff a certain way that it's hard for me to see what the actual code is. So actually, because what I also have gotten in the habit of over the years is pretty much every time I fix a bug that I've made, I do like a mini retro of like, what did I do that caused this bug to happen? Was it programmer error? Was it something else? And is there something I can change so that it doesn't happen again? And actually, I think if every time I wrote an insert statement, I did it like this with values here and this stuff here, that would keep me from making that error, right? And I know this sounds a little obsessive, but it's actually incredibly helpful. So now we've got products. And so now we just need some purchases, and then we are going to build up our select query that joins everything. And then we can break.
Hey, Adam, just real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
Can I see your schema?
The diagram? Or
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yep, for sure. Actually,
Would you mind sharing the link to that in the chat? I think then we can all actually use it and even move stuff around on it. We just can't change it.
yeah, that is a great idea. I can actually add you to this to edit it, but that's a little more work at the moment. Here's the link in the chat. I actually just took a screenshot of it as well. And let me just throw into Victor the link and the screenshot. I will say though, if you all have not already designed at least one data schema that looks really similar to this and already built a diagram for this, please mention that in the retro, because I think that was like very much the goal of the assignments for this week. So I hopefully that this part of the data schema should feel familiar. And if not, please do ping me and let me know, or mention it in the retro, because it means that, parts of the curriculum need to be redesigned. Like maybe I focus too much on one area or another. Let me actually just get back to the VS Code. And can everyone still see my VS Code screen? You all can see VS Code, correct? Yep. Okay, awesome. Thanks. I couldn't see the Zoom grid for a second there. And I'm just catching up on the Zoom chat. Andrew, excellent question. How am I ensuring I'm not creating duplicate tables every time without drop table? Yeah, that is a great question. What I decided to do is this stuff really all should end up maybe in a separate file or something, but it's okay. First thing I do is I drop the whole database. So every time I run this SQL script, I'm deleting the whole database and all its tables and building it fresh. And that's how I avoid needing to add drop table statements for each individual table. That is also, by the way, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, and I kind of like working this way. I think it's way easier. That is also why the first thing I do is connect to a database that's not the grocery store, because if in P-SQL I'm connected to and using the grocery store database, like here, if you all see, I'm connected to the grocery store database, it tells you the database that you're connected to here. You can also always do connection info if you're not sure. And if I try to drop a database that I'm connected to, I don't think Postgres will let me. Cannot drop the currently open database. So first thing I do is I connect to this default Postgres database that I know exists in every Postgres database server, because it's created by default and no one should be touching it or deleting it. And then I delete the grocery store database, and then I create it, and then I connect to it so that all of these things, all of my SQL is run in the grocery store database and not some other one. And I'll share this. This is all in the demo and notes directory, so I'll push this up as soon as we wrap so that this can be a reference for people who want it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason, I thought you were commenting out that create drop database line, but
Oh, no, I
okay.
think
Yeah.
it was right around there, and it went through a couple of iterations, but no, that's kind of what kicks off the whole script. All right, let's make some customer purchases. So they're gonna have an ID. It'd be good to give them a date, but I'm not even gonna worry about that right now. Customer ID is an integer that references customer's ID, and product ID is an integer that references product's ID, and quantity is an integer. Speaking of things I don't care about, what I don't have here is total cost. And in some ways, we've gone through a bunch of variations with this week, and in some ways, not having total cost here is quite nice because I've got the price for the product here. I've got the quantity here. I could write some queries to calculate total cost with like some, it can get a little tricky, and you might need a subquery. You might be able to get it working with group by. But it can be done, and it kind of in some ways solves a lot of potential problems and questions, at least for right now. And because if we did have this, we would just have to trust that whatever is executing our SQL correctly generates this, like our Python program. But point being, not caring about this is a perfectly legitimate design decision and makes my life easier. And now let's go ahead and create some data for this. And I'm going to use my new kind of syntax here. And in fact, I already kind of did this. So I am going to copy this. Does anyone know the keyboard shortcut for multiple cursors in VS Code?
Is it Command?
On Mac, it's Command Alt.
Command Alt. Thank you. And what were you going to say, Clarice?
Oh no, I'm probably wrong. I said Command D. I think that's to select all different ones.
Got it.
I've been using the hold down the option button and click in multiple places.
Oh no, where did we
Yeah, Command Option.
Sorry about that. I totally lost my my connection there. Yeah, I also have this like Vim plugin enabled, so it may not.
Yeah, Command Option or Alt, and then hold down the down key one, or press the down key once, and then again if you want 3.
Yeah, I can't. I apologize. I can't get it working at the moment, and it may be because I have this Vim plugin as well. But point being, this is a great example of where using multiple cursor things can be really nice. And let me go ahead and kind of get back to what we had before, because I was finding this really useful. Sorry about that little hiccup there. So we've got our customers table. And I'm not sure now why I've got this little one highlighted everywhere. But that's a mystery for another day. So now this is pretty much built. Next time maybe we'll do this with live share, and I could have just had you all drive while I navigate. So maybe we'll do that for future like demos and reviews. I think that could actually be a lot of fun. But fingers crossed, this is going to work. And the nice thing about this is these are foreign key references. So if this data doesn't exist, we should get an error. I think we don't really need to worry about uniqueness right now. So I think we're okay here. Let me go ahead and run this. And I do have a duplicate key value violates unique constraint. Customer purchases primary key. Key 1 already exists. And that would be because, actually, can anyone tell me why I'm seeing this error and what mistake I made here?
Are you giving too many values?
Sort of.
You also didn't specify what values you're pushing into it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could do this, but I think what makes more sense is to specify the columns that I want to insert values for. And that's exactly what I didn't do. And I want that to be customer ID, product ID, quantity. And I think you're right. I do have too many values. You absolutely are correct. I apologize because I copied and pasted this whole thing. And because I was creating like mock CSV data, the first column here is the primary key ID. So that is an excellent call. Actually, I could have fixed that and it would have worked just fine. But it's good to be consistent with this. And it just goes to show the danger of, I copied and pasted a tiny amount of stuff that I wrote and I ran into that error. So you got to be really careful copying and pasting stuff. Awesome. So this is working. The next step would be to write a select query with joins, putting it all together. And I know that could be a great review exercise. I do want us to take a break because I have been rolling for a while. Why don't we take, how does 15 minutes sound to people? Cool. Let me go ahead and stop the recording.